Good morning, everybody. Today is January 11th, 2024. We are working on the sampler sew along with Rita's Roost, Mona Dubois, and Rowena. This is block two. It did get chosen on our last live, and we are working on Delaware Quilts block of the month 4-color card trick. Now, the link for the pattern will be in the description below this video. And if you could go over there to that website, download the pattern so you can follow along with us. First, thank you all for coming and joining us in this adventure. It is supposed to be just a nice, clean, relaxing, fun type of sew. Hopefully, we'll be able to teach you some tricks or share our knowledge, or maybe you will pick up something along the way that will help you on your sewing journey. Now, the 4-color card trick that we are working on today is a basic block. This is a tutorial from start to finish of how I choose to complete the block. There are many different ways, many different methods, and you may find one that works best for you. This works best for me, so this is how I'm going to show you. Our brains are all unique, and we're just going to help develop some skill building as you enter this journey of quilting. So again, this is the 4-color card trick. Do not be intimidated. It is a fairly simple block, and it will teach you the HSTs that is in almost every block that we make. Okay, so I have my tools, and it's very basic. I have a rotary cutter, and I did change my blade out because I'm going to be cutting through multiple layers of fabric. I do have my 12.5-inch Creative Grids ruler to do my cutting and measuring. And I do have 5 different fabrics. I have 4 print fabrics, and I have my background, which is also has a print on it. It is just a lighter color to make our block stand out. So I do have my background fabric that I'm just going to set aside for now. Now, one of the easiest things about this pattern is that all the cuts will be the same for each color, and we are only using 2 fabrics for each of the print blocks. Now, I do have my fabric laid out, and this is the order that I want my blocks to be in. So I've chosen, and I print my patterns out in black and white because I have an industrial printer, and then I just use my computer, either my laptop or my PC, if I need to see some coloring to make note, and then I just make notes and go off of that. You can print yours in color if that helps you, and if you have access to that, or you can just do it right off your computer screen. So what I've done again is I've laid out my fabric in the order that I want my blocks. My yellow is going to be my top left block, ending with my green as my bottom right block. And I've laid that out all nice and neat. This is fabric that I have used and I've pulled from my scraps or from other projects. Most of this is from the Lori Holt line. So I have it nice and smooth. I'm going to set my pattern aside for a minute. And we are going to cut just a little larger by 1/4 of an inch the measurements that are given on the pattern. The reason why I do that is it gives me a little playroom in case my seams are not quite straight, or I've stitched maybe just one thread over, which would make my block a little smaller and not have that finished unit size that I'm looking for. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to cut the blocks that I'm going to use, and I'm going to start with a strip of fabric, cutting all 4 layers at once. Again, I'm going to cut 1/4 of the inch to the largest size. The largest size I'm going to cut is 5.5 inches by 11 inches or a little longer. So I'm actually going to cut 5.5 inches by 12 inches on my block. Now, it was mentioned, or someone had asked the question on the live on the 8th, where is your fabric placement? Your fabric placement, the fabric that you are cutting for your blocks should always be underneath your ruler. We don't want it off to the side. We want it under the ruler, and that way we can accurately measure what we're cutting. So I am going to square this up and just cut me a nice segment of a strip. It makes it easier to work with. I'm going to fold this up and place it off to the side. Now I'm going to square this up to 5.5, so I'm turning my fabric so that the edges, the straight edges that I just cut, will be my guidelines. I'm going to find the 5.5 on my ruler, align it straight. So I'm looking for my vertical line and my horizontal line. And I like to call that horizontal line the horizon because it always reminds me that it goes the way of the sunset. So I'm going to square that up as best I can so I can get a nice straight edge. And I'm going to cut away the selvage and some of those crooked pieces to make everything nice and neat. I'm discarding that. You can use those scraps to make a dog bed, to stuff a pillow. So now I have a unit that looks like that. I'm going to subcut these units into the size of squares that we need. Again, I'm cutting larger than the pattern. So my first block size, I want it to be 5 inches. I'm going to find that 5-inch mark on my ruler, placing my 5-inch and 5-inch, and I am going to cut that segment. There is a little waste to get the segment. And I'm just going to set this one aside. We are going to deal with this unit, this 5-inch segment, and this 5-inch segment, the smaller of the two block sizes, they are instructing us to cut on the diagonal too. So we are going to make a diagonal cut. It does not matter which way, but we are going to make a diagonal cut from one corner to the other. So I'm going to place my ruler right there at the tips, making sure everything is nice and straight. Take my cut, and there you go. We have our 2 segments for our first block. That's it. We're going to set this aside. We're going to grab our remaining piece of fabric, and now we are going to cut this to 5.5 and 5.5. I have a 5.5 mark on my Creative Grids ruler, so I am just going to place this right there on my 5.5 line and take a cut. I do save those strips. The bigger strips I save for applique or other projects where I need just a little bit of fabric so nothing gets wasted. Okay, so now we're with the bigger block. It's now a 5.5 block. The directions state that we need to cut 2 diagonal lines. We want to make sure everything is nice and neat. I did press out my fabric and lightly starched, but we want to make sure everything is nice and neat. We're going to repeat the same process that we did on the smaller block. We're just going to do it twice. So very carefully, we are going to find a corner, place our fabric on it. If we are happy with the placement of the ruler, we are going to take a cut. Now, at this point, I do not want you to drag your ruler. I want you to gently lift your ruler up so that we can keep our fabric in place. Some people turn the fabric. I kind of turn my body and I just work with what's there so I'm not moving my fabric around. So I am just going to place my ruler on the other side. So we are crossing over the diagonal line, being careful not to and I'm going to take a cut. Keep your hand safely away while applying a little pressure and cut down. We don't want to cut ourselves. We always want to cut as far away from our body as possible so that we do not have any accidents. Okay, so we've taken that final cut and now we have 4 segments. We are going to put that aside and we are going to work with our background fabric. So I have my background fabric. The block sizes for the background are exactly the same size. The only difference is we will need 2 blocks of the smaller unit, so 2 blocks of the 5-inch unit, and then 1 block of the 5.5. I'm going to repeat the same process that I did earlier, and I'm going to fold my fabric just because I do not have the space while I'm doing this video. So I'm going to make a 5.5 inch. I want to get at 5.5 inches. Put that fabric aside. I'm going to turn it over so I can get my full 5.5. And again, I have the half-inch sizes on my creative grid. If you do not have half-inch sizes, just be careful where you line it up. So from this, and I laid this over. So from this part here, I'm going to cut my 5-inch block. I'm making 2. And I'm aligning it and trying to have as little waste as possible. turning that over to square up my block and take all the ragged edges off. So that way we only have a 5-inch block. And we are going to repeat the process for the smaller block, cutting a diagonal line from corner to corner. And I'm going to go ahead and complete that step now. So now I have 4 half square triangles, and I'm going to place, excuse me, on the side for now. Okay. And then we just need 1 5.5-inch square. And so I'm going to cut this to my 5.5, again with my fabric underneath the ruler. And I'm just going to square up, square it up. Not cooperating. Okay. That up. So I have 1 5.5-inch block, and I am going to take 2 diagonal cuts, repeating the same process we did with the larger print box. So going point to point, gently lifting up our ruler, and I'm turning my ruler. I'm turning my body. It's much easier when you are cutting to stand up because you can see down on your fabric. But we're going point to point. All right, so now we have all our pieces cut. We have 4 units of the white, and I'm just going to set it aside for now. At this point, if you are still cutting your blocks, feel free to pause this video and just start it back up when you are ready to move on to the next step. If you give me a second, I forgot to plug in my iron. Okay, so now we have all our pieces cut, really simple, just a few cuts, and we are going to build out our block. Now, how you choose to build out your block and put this block together per the instructions is really up to you. But Rita did a video on her channel yesterday, and she mentioned that it's like putting a puzzle together. And making a block is exactly that. It's putting a puzzle together. And in this case, with my pattern, with the instructions, all the white is on the outside. This is the only time we're going to use the background. So I'm going to build my block from the outside in. And so what it tells me is that I'm going to need my 4 large units. Let me grab my small ones, my 4 large units. And we're going to make corners. We are just making corners. So our block or our fabric is all pointing out to make a little frame. And I don't know if you can see that. but I will show it to you in a minute. And let me see if I can get it. So I am making a frame and I can't get all of it in. And the next thing it says is that we are going to have a white block that goes down on each unit. Now we're just laying it down and then we will play with our fabric placement a little bit more. Okay. Now I'm going to work with large, my large um, pattern or print pieces. I'm going to work with that large print piece, and I am going to put one here, one here, one here, and one there. Then I am going to work with my, see, it says that I need to put one here. Now let's look at our pattern because sometimes it just, our print. So we're just laying it out. It says to put one, oh, we're going to do it this way. So this is going to move over just a bit. Okay. And I am going to find a way to make a kite or a triangle with my blocks. Going to repeat that on each side. Now you might want to work yours color to color, and that's fine, one block at a time. But I'm just building out my block. So now I have my triangle. And then I am going to fill in the spaces with my yellow or with my prints. So this is one block. Fill it there. Overlap. Fill it there. There. And I'm going to take another set and complete my blocks. And I just want every color to touch the block. If I can get it to work. Okay, so the points are in. I'm sorry, the points are in. That's not right. We're going to shimmy this over. Okay, we're getting there. Where did my points go? And you do have to play with it, and I'm going to add a little bit of a different angle. So our blocks look like that. And if you look at it, it kind of looks like a heart. So we've made 4 different heart-shaped patterns that are separated. Okay. So your block looks like this. And I'll let you take a moment to go ahead and lay out your blocks like the instruction says so that it looks like this. Okay. Now I'm going to push this out just a little so you can see it better and lay it out. Now we have, if you look at the corner, we have our large pieces here, our large half square triangles. Then we have units that look like this, which is a smaller triangle, and we call that a quarter square triangle. So we have a quarter square triangle. And what we are going to do, and what I like to do, is get the quarter square triangles taken care of so that we can turn it into a half square triangle. So at every place that there is a half square triangle, I am going to fold that over carefully, aligning the block, and I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and sew a quarter of an inch down the side so that when I open it up, it becomes a triangle. So again, I'm taking my quarters triangles, folding it over to make a half square triangle. Being careful not to stretch the fabric because now we are the fabric was cut on the bias when we cut diagonally, which means that the fabric has a little bit more stretch. And if we stretch the fabric while we're sewing, it will make our unit a little wonky. So at this point, I am going to take care of sewing all my my quarter triangle units together. And we are just going to do this and this. And I will play some background music while we're sewing, and I will get back with you. I do want to mention at this point, I do have my sewing machine set to 2.0. You can take it down to 1.8, but I want those seams to be nice, those stitches to be closed or close together. And I'm just going to chain piece all of this, which just simply means running one block in after another. I do use leaders and enders on when I'm sewing. That just helps save some thread. All right, so I have sewn all my quarter square triangle units together. Cutting them apart, and I'm going to just lightly finger press them and put them back in the puzzle. Lean it back out. And because we're working with 4 colors, it makes it a little easier. Because we want all our colors to touch. If we have another color all the way here, if we have a blue next to the green, we know something's not quite right. Last block or last unit to press out. At this point, if you want to take it to the sewing machine, you can, or you can finger press it like I did. I mean, the iron, you can, and give it a good press. You can. So now what we have left are just half square triangle units. Once we've taken that cut, we have half square triangle units. Even our middle block is just half square triangle units. We are simply going to sew our triangle units together. So we are going to put one on top of the other. We are putting one on top of the other. We are going to align that corner or those points, and we are going to sew. Now, when you are placing your fabric points under your sewing machine, you just want to be careful. Some sewing machines want to eat that point. If you use a little leader, which is just a scrap piece of fabric that you've run under the sewing machine, when you take your first stitch and you gently place this under, letting your feed dogs do the work, it should resolve that machine eating problem. So I am going to go ahead and sew these. You can go sew these together. You can go ahead and pause it and sew your half square triangles into blocks at this point, and we will meet you back. On this one here, we do want to make sure this is our corner or our middle block. We do want to nest our seams. If it helps to put a pin in it, you can. I am going to put a pin in it only because I'm sewing at an awkward angle. And I remove my pin right before I get to it. I do not want to sew on it. I did have a pin snap on me once years ago because I accidentally sewed over it. The pin snapped, and thankfully I wear glasses, so it hit my glasses and not my eyes. And you take this process as slow as you need to. We are just making sure that fabric stays aligned. And our last block. Okay, I am going to move this over. I do have extra pieces from what we cut. I'm going to put it off to the side. And I am going to set my threads in half or apart. All my units apart. So now we are left with the blocks that look like this. And at this point, I'm giving mine a good press. So I'm just bringing my iron out. And I am going to press my fabric just so that my blocks are lined nice and straight or nice and flat. And you don't have to kill it in the process, but we're just wanting those seams to lie a little flatter for the necks. This is the next step. And you can press to the dark if you want. You can set your seam if you want, which just means running your iron over the seam before you open it up. So I have all my blocks. Put my iron down. Now I have all my units and I am just going to put my units back together. And I'm just rebuilding it out. On that other all my rebuilding my block back out, and I don't know if you can see it. Show my fabric pieces touch. Okay, so I did forget to mention that at this point you can snip off those little dog ears. And that's simply those little corners that stick out from the block. And I'm going to take care of that now. And you can go ahead and snip yours off if you want to. It just makes it a little easier when you're putting it together. All right, so all my dog ears have been snipped off and my blocks have been laid out. Let me make sure everything looks right. And I'm just taking a second look at it. Let me turn this way to the camera so you can see it. Let's get my puzzle piece back up. So Now all we have is a 9 patch, and we are going to sew these units together, starting with this one, working our way down. So we'll go to the sewing machine and we'll see you back in a minute. All right, so I have sewn my rows together, and I am just going to put them back in order. So now I have 3 rows. I'm just going to finger press at those corners, going finger pressing outside on the top and the bottom. So pressing out, finger pressing out. And on the middle blocks, I am going to press that seam in towards the middle. Just finger press it. If you want to iron it, your seams at this point, that's fine. Now I'm going to sew these together. Again, I am a pinner, so I'm going to pin at those units. And I'm going to repeat the same step with the last row. So I'll see you back in a minute. Okay, so I've sewn my rows together. I am going to go to my ironing station and take a final press. All right, I am back and I have my unit done, but it seems to be a little wonky, and that happens sometimes. I'm just a little wonky. But I'm going to square up my block and I am going to show you how to square up the block. This is the reason why I went ahead and cut my units just a little bit bigger so that if my sewing was a little wonky, I could go ahead and take care of that. What I am going to do is in the middle of my block, there is a circle or the bit of my ruler. I'm just going to make a little mark with my Sharpie that we can wipe off. And I am going to find the very center unit or the very center of my block. I'm going to place that dot right there. I'm going to place the dot exactly on that center unit, making sure everything is aligned and squared. And I am just going to trim it up a little to clean up my block. And turning it around, squaring up to the other edge, making sure that everything is aligned. Taking off those pieces. Discarding the trash. Off to the side. And there you go. The 4-color card trick. Not much to it. It takes a little practice the first time around, but I have confidence and faith that you'll get it. It's a really fun block. Once you know the basics, it is really fun. Those 1/4-inch triangles that we've done will become very easy and second nature to you, and you will be able to create and make a whole bunch of blocks that are out there. I hope you follow along with us on the Sampler Sew Along at Rita's Roost. Our next live is Monday, January 15th. I hope you come to join us, even if you just come up for the entertainment. You all be blessed. You all have a great day, and I will see you soon. Be kind. Bye.